And now here's part 2, picking up where I left off on part 1. At 1 minute 42 of that video, we're showing another graph, and it's not adjusted for inflation. No explanation is given as to why oil prices started falling dramatically after their peak in July. At WTRG.com/prices.htm, there are several informative graphs showing how the price of crude has ebbed and fallen over time, and it's interesting that the price of world crude started a dramatic uptick after U.S. implemented price controls were enacted. This user is apparently in the dark about the numerous state-run oil companies among OPEC members, but why mention this when you can show a graph? Pardon me while I chuckle. And now he shifts the focus at 2 minutes 2:20 segment of his video. He says this: during President Clinton's last 4 years, electricity costs dropped 1.4 cents per kilowatt hour. I wonder why this happened. Maybe it was because in 1995 the United States got about 2.2% of its net electricity generation from quote-unquote renewable sources, according to the Energy Information Administration. By 2000, the last full year of the Clinton administration, that percentage had dropped to 2.1%. By contrast, the combined share of coal, petroleum, and natural gas rose to 70% from 68% during the same time frame. I guess this user is now in favor of building more coal-fired plants, oil refineries, and maybe even more nuclear power plants. We're certainly glad to hear that. I wonder if this user is also aware that demand is constantly increasing. Apparently not. Then he moves on to bashing Bush on the price of food. This dog won't hunt either. At 2:52 we get another gasoline price graph that isn't adjusted for inflation, and at 5 minutes and 4 seconds we get a graph showing food prices are rising. I wonder why. This comes from my article on ethanol, which I'll reference. Corn prices, which doubled since 2006, are close to $4 a bushel at the time of that article. Eggs are up 44% from last year. Whole milk, while milk up 21% has jumped to $3.83 a gallon, the highest retail price since World War II. What's driving record food prices? Federal policies mandating more food for fuel are a big factor. Requirements that we use more ethanol over oil for energy use are causing us to divert larger amounts of farmland from food to corn-based fuel, contributing to record food costs. And on the same vein, a bushel of corn that cost $2 2 years ago, close to $4 today. Corn is integral to a huge array of groceries. Corn syrup is widely used as a sweetener because sugar is too expensive, and there are health fears about artificial substitutes. And of course, corn goes into lots of baked goods of particular significance. Corn is a primary feed for livestock. There are no substitutes with a comparable nutritional value. Consequently, as the price of corn increases, it costs more to feed cows, pigs, and chickens. Ask any farmer, they'll tell you this. These costs are then passed along to the consumer, who pays more for dairy, meat, eggs, and all the derivatives thereof. With corn hovering at record prices, farmers have found it more profitable to grow corn, thus leaving less land available for the production of other grains, reducing their supply. The prices of grains and grain byproducts like bread or pasta increase accordingly. And the price of corn, again, it goes over, I have several articles on this, it goes over the price of corn increasing. About 10% of the world's sugar crop is now being diverted to ethanol production, doubling the global price of sugar. Americans are unaware of these increases because of farm subsidies to sugar farmers. The high prices paid for corn by ethanol producers are artificially supported by large and extensive federal government grants and subsidies. The federal government also encourages state governments to give subsidies and tax exemptions to ethanol producers. It is almost certain that the ethanol industry could not stand on its own without these subsidies. The increase in prices induced by ethanol is likely to have a long-term effect. Ron Plain, a professor of agricultural economics at the University of Missouri, has stated that, I would argue that ethanol and inflation will raise the prices for meat, eggs, milk, cheese, and other dairy products around 12% by 2009. Inflation has recently become a central concern at the Federal Reserve, and any increase spurred by higher prices resulting from ethanol production is worrisome. The ethanol tax credit began under the Carter administration. In 1994, Uncle Albert Gore broke a 50-50 tie in the Senate, making the 10% mandate law, And in late 2007, Bush signed legislation ramping up the production of ethanol use to 36 billion gallons by 2022. This is roughly 5 times the level mandated in 2006. If Bush and others, meaning a lot of Democrats, especially those from Midwestern states like Nebraska, Ben Nelson, if Bush and others had ceased to their love affair with ethanol, we wouldn't see more of our food going into the gas tank. So, despite this user's generalized nonsense and undetailed research, you can see there's more to the increase in crude oil prices and food prices than he would let you know. Like I said, his research is very undetailed. He never addresses why the price of gas was increasing and why the prices of food were increasing. But why get into details when you can just throw up a few ridiculous graphs? This ends part 2. I'll have all the relevant links on the right side. Don't thank us now.